All right, let's dive into something really important for any business today, and that's using historical GA4 data. We're going to dig through some Google articles and presentations and really try to unearth some valuable insights for you. And, it's not just about the numbers themselves. It's really about going deeper than that. It's about understanding your users in a way that you can predict their next move. A 2019 study found that most mobile games actually lose a whopping 75% of their users after just one day.
Yeah, that's churn. And that's a problem that every business faces.
Absolutely.
But what's really interesting is that GA4's historical data can be a real secret weapon in your arsenal against churn. Okay, so GA4, Google Analytics 4, it's a whole new ball game. It's really unlike the old days where we would just track page views. GA4 is built around events. So every click, every scroll, every video watched, it's all captured as a separate event, which gives you a really granular view of how users are interacting with your website or your app.
So instead of just seeing that someone visited my website, I can actually see the steps they took, what they clicked on, how long they spent on each page. That's amazing.
Exactly. And the best part is GA4 allows you to export all of this data into BigQuery, which is Google's data warehouse.
BigQuery, BigQuery. I'm hearing that name a lot these days. What makes it so special?
Well, think about it this way. Imagine querying a year's worth of user actions across your entire app in just seconds. That's the kind of power that BigQuery brings. It can handle massive data sets, terabytes of data, and analyze them incredibly quickly.
Like terabytes now. That sounds a bit intimidating. I'm no data scientist.
You don't have to be precise. BigQuery is surprisingly user-friendly, even if you're not a coding whiz. You can use a language called SQL to ask very specific questions of your data, and then BigQuery gives you the answers in a way that's easy to understand.
Okay, that's reassuring. So we've got all this rich historical data in BigQuery now. But how do we actually make sense of it? Staring at rows and rows of data isn't exactly going to give me actionable insights.
And that's where magic begins. With BigQuery, you're not limited to just looking at those pre-built reports.
Yeah.
Like in the old Google Analytics, you can actually build completely custom reports tailored to answer your specific business questions.
Custom reports now we're talking. That sounds way more powerful than just looking at some generic data. Tell me more about this.
Okay, so imagine this. You're a detective at a crime scene. GA4 is collecting all of the raw evidence. Standard reports are like, that initial police briefing, helpful. But sometimes you need to actually go back to the raw evidence yourself to find those crucial hidden clues. That's where BigQuery and custom reporting comes in.
So I can ask BigQuery very specific questions like, show me all the users who added a product to their cart but didn't complete the purchase. Or show me which marketing campaigns are actually driving the most high-value customers.
Exactly. And the level of detail you can get is incredible. You can segment your data by any number of factors, demographics, location, device type, behavior. You really start to understand the nuances of your user base.
I'm starting to see the potential here. It's like going from using a magnifying glass to a high-powered microscope. But how do we go about creating these custom reports? Does it require a degree in data science?
No, not at all. There's a few different ways to do it, but one of the easiest is using the Google Analytics Sheets add-on. It lets you connect your Google Sheet directly to BigQuery, so you can pull in the exact data you need and then analyze it right there in Sheets.
Hold on, so I can write SQL queries directly against my custom Google Sheet. That's amazing. So even if I don't know SQL, I can still build pretty sophisticated reports just using Google Sheets.
Yeah, you got it. And the best part is, because your sheet is directly linked to BigQuery, your analysis will always be up to date.
So no more manually downloading reports and trying to combine data from different sources. That's a huge time saver. I'm starting to see how this could revolutionize the way we work.
Absolutely. And this is really just scratching the surface of what's possible with this historical GA4 data and BigQuery. We'll dive into some even more powerful applications in just a moment.
All right, I'm on the edge of my seat. Let's take a quick pause and then we'll jump into how we can use all this data to tackle one of the biggest challenges every business faces: churn. Hashtag PTS, The Deep Dive, episode 2025-0114, part 2 of 3.
All right, so let's shift our focus a bit now to how we can use this data-driven approach to tackle one of the biggest challenges every business faces, and that's churn.
Yeah, churn. It feels like a constant battle, to keep users engaged and coming back for more.
It is a battle, and one that can be won with the right insights. Now, remember that mobile game Flood It that we mentioned earlier?
Yeah.
Imagine you have months of historical GA4 data from Flood It players all flowing into BigQuery.
Okay, so we're talking about data, like how often they play, what levels they reach, how much time they actually spend in the app, and maybe even if they rage quit after a particularly tough level.
Exactly. And, demographic information like their age, gender, location, the types of devices they use. with all of this data, we can actually build a machine learning model in BigQuery that can predict which users are showing signs of churning.
Wait, hold on. We can actually predict which users are about to leave.
Yeah.
That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It might sound like science fiction, but it's actually very real. We're essentially teaching a computer to spot patterns in user behavior that might indicate that they're about to jump ship. And BigQuery ML makes this incredibly easy to do, even if you're not a data scientist.
Okay, but let's break this down a bit.
Yeah.
You mentioned machine learning. How does that actually work in practice?
Think of it this way. We're giving the computer a crash course in user psychology. We're showing it tons of examples of past churn, pointing out specific patterns in the data and saying, see these red flags, learn them. Now go find users who are exhibiting similar behavior.
Fascinating. So we're not just looking at raw data. We're using it to train a model that can actually understand and predict user behavior. But what kind of data are we feeding into this model? What are some examples of those red flags?
Well, first we need to accurately identify which users have already churned based on their engagement patterns. This becomes our training data.
So if a user hasn't opened the Flooded app in, say, like a month, we can pretty confidently label them as churned.
Right. And that label becomes a really crucial piece of information for our model to learn from. Next, we process those demographic features. We talked about age, gender, location, and so on. Maybe we notice that younger users tend to churn more frequently than older users, or that users in a particular region are less engaged than users elsewhere.
So the model starts to see if there are any correlations between these demographics and churn. And what about those behavioral red flags you mentioned?
That's where it gets really interesting. We dive deep into the behavioral data, how many times they've played, what game modes they prefer, what levels they've reached, whether they've made any in-app purchases.
So we're looking for patterns in how people actually use the app. For example, maybe users who only play on easy mode are more likely to churn than those who challenge themselves on harder levels.
Precisely. Or perhaps users who haven't made any in-app purchases are more likely to churn than those who are already invested financially. By analyzing all of this data demographics, behavior past churn, we can train our machine learning model to identify those crucial red flags.
Okay, I'm starting to see how powerful this is. It's like having a team of user behavior analysts working around the clock, constantly looking for these patterns and predicting which users are at risk. But what happens next? Does the model just spit out a list of names and say, these people are going to leave?
Not quite. The model will actually calculate a churn probability score for each user. This score represents the likelihood that a user will churn based on all the patterns it's learned from that historical data.
Okay, so it's not a guarantee, but more of a calculated risk assessment.
Exactly. It's like a weather forecast. It's not always going to be perfect, but it gives you very valuable information to make informed decisions.
So let's say our model gives us a list of users with high churn probability scores. What do we do with that information? This is where the rubber meets the road, right?
This is where the real magic happens. Now you can take proactive steps to retain those high-risk users before they even think about leaving. You can use platforms like Firebase to send them targeted notifications.
Maybe offer them a discount on in-app purchases, bonus levels, early access to new features.
You got it. You could even segment those high-risk users in GA4 and tailor your marketing campaigns specifically to them. It's all about turning insights into action.
Wow, this is incredible. We're essentially turning historical data into a proactive tool to keep our users engaged and prevent churn. I'm starting to see why this deep dive is so important for any business.
It really is. It's about using data to understand your users better than ever before, and then using that understanding to create a more engaging and valuable experience for them.
This has been an eye-opening conversation. We've gone from just understanding what GA4 and BigQuery are to actually using them to tackle a very real business problem in a data-driven way. I'm excited to hear more about how this can be applied to other areas of business. Let's take a quick pause, and then we'll wrap up with some key takeaways and a strong call to action. Hashtag TTS The Deep Dive, episode 2025-0114, part 3 of 3. So we've seen how powerful this historical GA4 data can be, for tackling churn. But I have a feeling this is just the tip of the iceberg, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The strategies we've discussed today, the power of GA4's historical data and the analytical capabilities of BigQuery, these are not just limited to churn prediction. This data-driven approach is really applicable to any business that's collecting user data.
So whether you're running an e-commerce store, a SaaS platform, a media site, or even a brick-and-mortar business with a digital presence, understanding your historical data can unlock these incredible insights.
Exactly. And it's not just about combating churn. You can use historical GA4 data to answer all sorts of crucial business questions. It's like having a treasure map, that leads you to the heart of your customers' behavior and motivations.
So what kind of treasure are we talking about here? What other ways can businesses use this data to improve their bottom line?
Well, imagine you're an e-commerce business. You could use historical GA4 data to map out the most common paths users take to make a purchase. Where do they drop off? Which pages do they spend the most time on? This kind of insight can help you optimize your website for conversions.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Instead of just guessing what's working and what's not, you can actually see the data and make informed decisions about your website, design product placement, and even your marketing campaigns.
Precisely. Or let's say you're a sauce company. You could use historical GA4 data to analyze how users are interacting with your product. Which features are they using the most? Where are they getting stuck? This kind of insight can help you prioritize your product development efforts and make sure that you're building features that people actually want.
And it's not just about understanding what people are doing, it's about understanding why. We can really start to connect the dots between user actions and their motivations.
Exactly. For example, you could analyze how user behavior changes after you release a new feature or run a particular marketing campaign. Did it have the desired effect? Did it actually improve engagement? Did it lead to more conversions? The answers are all there in your historical data.
Okay, I'm getting the picture here.
Yeah.
Historical GA4 data is like a gold mine of insights just waiting to be discovered. And BigQuery is the tool that gives us the power to mine that gold efficiently and effectively.
That's a great analogy. But the most important thing to remember is that this gold mine is unique to your business. It holds the answers to your most pressing questions, the key to unlocking growth and achieving your specific goals.
So to recap, GA4's ability to export data to BigQuery is a game changer. We can create custom reports and machine learning models that give us a microscopic view of our historical data, and this in turn empowers us to make data-driven decisions to combat churn, optimize our marketing campaigns, improve our products and websites, and ultimately drive business growth.
You've nailed it. It's about moving from gut feelings to data-backed decisions, from reacting to problems to proactively solving them.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling incredibly empowered right now and a little bit data hungry, to be honest.
Well, that's the beauty of a good deep dive. It sparks curiosity and leaves you wanting to explore further.
So to our listeners, we leave you with this. How could you use historical GA4 data to answer your own unique business questions? What mysteries are hidden in your data just waiting to be uncovered? Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Experiment with the tools and unlock the full potential of your data.
Remember, the insights are there, waiting to be discovered. It's up to you to start digging.